Hi, this is the next in the series of time-lapse drawing compilation that I've been doing for the 2020-2020. And first up we have is Addison, who is a character in my series Pop Gun War, published by Image Comics. And this was requested specifically by a Patreon subscriber. He asked for Addison and the next one, the rich kid, sort of be facing off against each other. And this guy is kind of like a sort of a homeless guy. I don't really ever call him that, but he seems like a tortured soul, at least at first. And then in the first issue really gets control of his life. But this guy, the rich kid, who I'm working on right now, is a tormentor, kind of like a demonic force that Addison can't really see, but is constantly pestered by. And the character Sinclair is the only one who can see and hear him, but he doesn't really have any effect on Sinclair, so Sinclair will yell at him sometimes, and it's because the explanation I always had in my head is because Sinclair has these angel wings, so it kind of lets him see some supernatural elements, but it's subtle. Here I'm coloring with a Raphael 8404 number 3 brush. The next one up is the airship driver, which I believe is also suggested by the same Patreon subscriber. And this was a character that first popped up in a Happy Endings anthology, along with Orson, that you saw in the last compilation. He drives this airship where this character Smith and Orson and Gwen and a few other people. It's sort of like a space that I had to do like a weekly gag strip. I did a strip called Super Mundane, and he was really one of the only adult presents, and it seemed like he was just there to be annoyed by the children. He was constantly yelling at him to shut up and stuff. This character is kind of loosely based off the Swamp Thing, I guess, or Marvel's Man-Thing. But someone suggested that I draw Swamp Thing, and Swamp Thing I did as like an Inktober or January or February drawing last year, and for some reason it was like one of my most well-liked things, and I decided to kind of do my own take on it. So it's not Swamp Thing, because I want to print it at one point. So I called it the Marshalling. Someone on Instagram suggested I call it the Marsh Object, which I thought was kind of funny. But I'm just going with marshalling, and I might use him at some point, maybe in like the Wrenchies world. But here's the finished, and this seemed to be really well liked too for some reason. And the next one up is Vivian Taylor, who's part of a psychic duo. These two girls in the Wrenchies, they're part of the adult Wrenchies, and they're actually part of triplets. So it was like they were born 3 sisters, and at some point, which I don't really say in the story, but at one point in their life as children, one of the sisters dies, is murdered, and the other 2 have a psychic bond with her ghost, so that's why there's a head in the middle. And I did these as a diptych, and this was just something I wanted to do. I just got the idea of like, oh, since they're twins, I'll have them be side by side. And I should have done the right side first, because on Instagram, the way they pop up when you can see the whole feed, they were on opposite sides, and I wanted them to line up, the face in the middle to line up. But I decided to do the left one first, and I fixed it kind of on Instagram. I deleted the post and then repost it after I did the second one. But here you can see them lined up, and I don't have a picture of them both together, which I should have included on here, but I didn't do that. So this is as good as it's going to get, seeing it like this. And then here I am inking with one of the Faber-Castell Pitt pens, which is, I don't know, my preferred way to do these drawings. Like later on, you'll see a couple of dogs that I did just solely as gouache paintings. But I don't know, I like the feel of inking with a pen, kind of more even than inking with a brush. And I like the look of it too a little better. And here's the Virgale Taylor's her name. And here we have Sherwood Presley Breadcoat. The second one I've done of Sherwood, but this is his younger self. When at the beginning of the Wrenchies, he kind of opens up the Wrenchies, him and his brother Orson, and so he's dressed in the stripedy shirt that I have him wearing to sort of symbolize him at his youngest point. And I even have him wearing a little mask that he wears sometimes. It's just for kicks. I mean, there's not really any reason he does it. He thinks it's fun. So, and here we have in the background Smiley, the amulet that he carries with him his whole life. Sometimes Orson has it, but when they're together, but he takes it with him, and after they're separated. And so someone on Patreon asked me to do a corgi, so I decided to include a science fiction, sort of a Sid Mead background. Someone also suggested I do like a Sid Mead type thing. It was the same person. So I decided to kind of combine the two, and I did, this is pretty much just a gouache painting. I think I did a little bit of pen work on some of the black areas at first, but yeah, and I just kind of made up this background based off a couple of Sid Mead paintings, illustrations. And here is the second Frank Jean L'Astronaut drawing I've done. The other one was the Cyber Boxer version of him, which, happens a little later after he's like transformed. It's in Popcorn War chain letter. But this is one of the older stories I've done. He came from a story I did in Meat House, the Love Songs issue, which is one of my favorite things that I did for Meat House. And he gets, he's just kind of floating in space, running out of oxygen in that story, sort of reminiscing about his life. And then we pick up in Popcorn War chain letter, he has a little adventure where he goes in the space station and gets this different suit and then falls to Earth. And then his story continues throughout chain letter. In each of the chapters we see him. And he ends up in the future with Gwen, and he's like a cyborg basically by then. And the same person that suggested the corgi asked me to do a Sheltie, a blue Merle Sheltie, which I wasn't familiar with this kind of dog, but it was kind of fun to draw. And the painting part seemed to be not as fun. I spent way too long on this and on the corgi, just rendering the fur and stuff. I'm not too accustomed to doing that, but it turned out okay, I guess. And this is the last one. We have Goat, Brian O'Keefe. I named him after my childhood best friend. Just, I don't know why, I just thought it was fun. And I gave him a Deadly Class hat. I was just hanging out with Rick Remender and Lee Luridge recently, and I got one of those baseball caps, the trucker hats. So I thought it would be fun to have him, because he always wears trucker hats in the Wrenchies. But yeah, he's in the Wrenchies, and he kind of fancies himself the best swordsman in the world, and he's really good. But I think Bance could probably beat him. Bance is pretty much the best in every kind of style of fighting, but Goat just pretty much uses his sword, and he's a badass, but he's kind of like a beer swilling redneck type dude. A little bit of comic relief in the story, and that's it for this week. Thanks for looking at these, and I'll see you soon.